The message appeared on Ethan Cole's phone at 12:04 a.m. 3 lines of text that made his heart stop beating for a full second. Can we stay with you tonight? Please, just until morning. The kids are freezing. It was the name attached to it that froze him completely. Clara. 6 years. 6 years since she vanished, taking with her the only warmth his life had ever known. 6 years since the last time he'd seen her, standing at the edge of his penthouse balcony, tears in her eyes and secrets she refused to explain. Ethan read the message again, unable to believe it was real. Then his phone buzzed a second time. A location pin. A park downtown. The temperature outside had dropped to 22 degrees. He didn't think. He just moved. The streets of Boston were slick with a film of ice, streetlights blurring into halos through the windshield of his car. Ethan gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles ached. The city had never looked colder, emptier. Somewhere in that frozen maze was the woman who once loved him enough to break his heart, and 2 children she called the kids. When he pulled up beside the park, his breath caught. There she was. Clara sat huddled on a bench under a flickering lamppost, a blanket wrapped around 2 small figures curled against her sides. Her hair, once a soft chestnut cascade, was damp with frost. The look in her eyes when she finally noticed him was the same mix of pride and exhaustion he remembered. The look of someone who had learned to survive without expecting rescue. Clara, he said softly, stepping closer. She flinched at his voice. The twins stirred, one of them coughing weakly. She started, her voice hoarse. I didn't mean to text you. You texted me, Ethan said, kneeling in front of her. You asked for help. Her eyes filled with guilt. It was supposed to go to someone else. I hit the wrong number. Then the wrong number saved you, he said. Come on, let's get you warm. She shook her head. We'll be fine until morning. Someone's coming. No one's coming, he said quietly, looking at the twins. They shouldn't have to spend another minute out here. The boy, maybe 5, maybe 6, had his mother's eyes. The girl, half asleep against Clara's shoulder, had hair dark like Ethan's. Something inside him twisted. Please, he said. Let me help. Clara hesitated for a long, trembling moment before whispering, just for tonight. By the time they reached his penthouse, the twins were asleep in the back seat, their cheeks flushed from the heat of the car. Ethan carried them one by one up the elevator, careful not to wake them. Clara followed silently, her arms wrapped around herself. Inside, the warmth hit them like a wave. Ethan guided her toward the guest room, pulling out spare blankets. They can take the bed, she murmured. I'll stay here. You'll all stay here, he said firmly. The couch is for guests, your family. The word slipped out before he could stop it. Clara froze. We're not. He turned away before she could finish. I'll make something hot. When he returned from the kitchen with steaming cocoa and a plate of toast, Clara was sitting on the floor beside the bed, stroking her daughter's hair. The little girl's breathing had evened out. The boy had kicked one small foot free of the blanket. You should sleep, Ethan said softly. Clara looked up at him, her eyes rimmed red. Why are you doing this? Because you asked, he said simply, and because I should have done it 6 years ago. Her mouth opened, then closed again. She turned her gaze back to the twins. They don't know, she whispered. Don't know what? Who you are. Ethan's pulse thudded. Clara? Not tonight, she said quickly. Please. He swallowed his questions, forcing himself to nod. Tomorrow then. For a while silence filled the room, broken only by the hum of the heater and the quiet rhythm of children breathing in sleep. Ethan sat in the doorway, watching them. He remembered how Clara used to laugh in her sleep, how she'd curl toward him like a flower seeking sunlight. Now there was only exhaustion etched into her face, a weariness that seemed carved into her bones. He wanted to ask 100 things. Where she'd been, why she'd left, who these children were. But the answers could wait. For now, all that mattered was that she was here. When she finally drifted off, her head resting against the side of the bed, Ethan pulled a blanket over her shoulders. His fingers brushed her cheek for the briefest second, a whisper of touch that felt like both goodbye and beginning. Then he turned out the light and stood there, watching the woman he had never stopped loving, and the two sleeping strangers who somehow felt like home. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft and endless, covering the city in white, and Ethan realized that whatever story this night had begun, there would be no going back. Because the moment Clara texted him by mistake, fate had decided it was time for him to answer. When Ethan woke the next morning, the penthouse was silent except for the faint whisper of the city outside. He stood at the edge of his bedroom for a long moment, listening. For a second, he wondered if he had dreamed the night before. Clara's text, the park bench, the twins asleep in the back seat. But then he heard it, the soft clatter of dishes, the low murmur of a woman's voice. He stepped into the hallway barefoot and stopped at the threshold of the kitchen. Clara was there, her hair loosely tied back, wearing one of his old sweatshirts that hung off her shoulders. The twins were perched on stools at the counter, Liam half asleep over a bowl of cereal, Emma drawing smiley faces into the condensation on her glass. For the first time in 6 years, his home looked alive. Clara looked up and froze. "You're awake." "Yeah," Ethan said, clearing his throat. "Didn't expect breakfast." "I didn't want to impose." She gestured to the cereal boxes and milk. "They were hungry. I kept it simple." "It's fine," he said quickly. "You could have ordered anything." Her mouth twitched in a small, wary smile. "I forgot what ordering even feels like." He poured himself a coffee, watching her over the rim of the mug. The tension between them was a living thing, fragile, cautious, and quietly aching. Liam yawned and rubbed his eyes. "Mommy, can we stay here tonight too?" Clara's spoon froze halfway to her lips. "We can't, honey. Mr. Cole just helped us for one night." Ethan's gaze met hers. "You can stay longer if you need." She shook her head. "You've done enough." "I don't think I have." Her eyes flicked toward the twins, lowering her voice. "Ethan, Clara." His tone softened. "They shouldn't have to leave until we figure things out." She hesitated, torn between pride and practicality. "Just one more night," she said finally. "One more," he agreed, though both of them knew he didn't mean it. By midday, snow had started falling again. The city outside his windows looked almost peaceful. White rooftops, muffled horns, smoke rising from chimneys. Ethan sat at his desk, but his focus kept slipping from the spreadsheet on his screen to the faint laughter drifting in from the living room. He'd spent years trying to forget that sound. Clara was sitting cross-legged on the floor with Emma, sorting through puzzle pieces. Liam was curled on the couch, his blanket wrapped around him like a cocoon. Ethan watched quietly from the doorway until Clara noticed him. "Work not keeping you busy enough?" she asked, not unkindly. "Apparently not today," he said. "They look happy." "They are. Kids don't ask for much, just warmth and quiet." He nodded toward the boy. "Is he feeling better?" Clara's expression softened. "A bit. He was sick last week. It comes and goes." "Let me call my doctor," Ethan said. "He's great with kids." She shook her head. "We'll be fine." "Clara, this isn't about pride. He needs to be seen." The firmness in his voice caught her off guard. After a moment, she exhaled. "All right, if it's quick." The clinic was bright and sterile, the walls painted a too cheerful yellow. The nurse smiled at the twins, handing each of them a sticker before guiding them into an exam room. Ethan followed, his presence solid but unobtrusive, while Clara hovered protectively near the edge of the room. Liam sat on the table, small legs dangling. The doctor smiled gently. "And who do we have here?" "I'm Liam," he said. "This is my sister, Emma. Mommy says we're twins, but I'm older by 4 minutes." Ethan smiled. "That's a lot of responsibility." The doctor examined Liam, checked his chest, his throat, and then said, "Mild bronchitis, nothing serious. Keep him warm and hydrated. I'll prescribe something mild." The nurse handed over a form. "Parent signature here, please." She looked automatically at Ethan. "Your dad, right?" Clara's pen froze midair. Ethan's chest tightened, but he managed a small, polite smile. "No, just a friend." The word friend sounded foreign in his mouth. Clara's eyes stayed fixed on the form as she signed, her hand trembling slightly. When they left, the cold hit them in a rush. Ethan helped Liam into his coat, kneeling to zip it up. "You did great in there, buddy," he said. Liam grinned. "Doctors are scary, but Mommy says brave people do things even when they're scared." Ethan met Clara's gaze over the boy's head. She looked away first. That evening, the apartment was quiet again. The twins were asleep early, worn out from the trip. Clara sat by the window, the lights of the city reflecting in her eyes. "You didn't have to pay for that," she said softly. "I wanted to." "You always want to fix things with money," she said, not cruelly, just truthfully. "But some things don't work that way." "I know," he said, "but it's all I had left to offer." She turned to face him. "You had me once, and that wasn't enough to keep?" The words stung more than she realized. Ethan rubbed his thumb against the edge of his coffee cup. "I didn't know why you left. I looked for you for months. Then I stopped. I thought you'd made your choice." Clara's breath caught. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then very quietly, "It wasn't my choice." Ethan looked at her sharply. "What do you mean?" Her hand tightened around her mug. "Not tonight." He wanted to push, to demand the truth, but something in her voice stopped him. She wasn't ready, and maybe, he realized, neither was he. He stood. "You and the kids can stay here as long as you need." "Ethan, no conditions," he said. "Just stay." Clara's gaze flicked toward the hallway where the twins slept. The fight left her shoulders. "One more night," she whispered. Ethan smiled faintly. "We'll see." Outside, the city lights shimmered against the falling snow, and somewhere between the silence and the truth still unsaid, hope began to thaw. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the tall windows, catching in the dust motes that floated lazily above the penthouse floor. For the first time in years, Ethan woke to the sound of laughter. Real, bright laughter. He sat up, momentarily disoriented, before realizing it came from the living room. He walked out quietly, drawn to it. The twins were sitting on the carpet, surrounded by a small army of toy blocks he didn't remember owning. Clara was beside them, her hair still damp from an early shower, smiling faintly as she helped Liam build what looked like a crooked tower. Emma clapped every time another piece stayed upright. "You're up early," Ethan said from the doorway. Clara looked up, startled, then smiled a little. "They didn't sleep much. New place, new beds. I can have the guest room adjusted for them. Softer pillows, maybe some nightlights." "That's not necessary." "I know," he said gently, "but I want to." The silence that followed wasn't awkward this time. It was full of unspoken things neither of them dared to touch. Emma crawled over, holding up a yellow block. "Mr. Ethan, can you help me make a house?" Ethan crouched beside her. "Sure. What kind of house?" "A warm one," she said, smiling. "Like this one." Something inside him broke and healed at the same time. By mid-morning, Ethan had canceled his meetings and taken the day off. Clara protested at first, but he ignored her. They spent the morning making pancakes with too much batter and watching cartoons that made no sense. Clara tried not to enjoy it, but she did. For the first time in years, she saw her children laughing without worry. After lunch, Ethan suggested a walk to the aquarium a few blocks away. Clara hesitated but agreed when she saw the twins' faces light up. The city outside was thawing from winter's grip, slush pooling in the gutters, the air still sharp but breathable. Clara walked between Ethan and the children, her hands shoved into her coat pockets. She couldn't remember the last time she had done something so ordinary, so normal. Inside the aquarium, Emma pressed her palms to the glass, her breath fogging it as schools of fish shimmered by. Liam pointed at a stingray gliding along the bottom. Ethan leaned close to Clara. "They're amazing," he murmured. "They're everything," she said softly, not realizing she'd spoken aloud. When she turned, she found him watching her, not just looking, but seeing her the way he used to. It made her chest ache. The twins ran ahead toward the jellyfish exhibit, and for a moment, Ethan and Clara were alone in the dim blue light. He spoke first. "I didn't just imagine it, did I? That night in the park. You looked like you were ready to disappear again." "I almost did. Why didn't you?" She met his gaze. "Because of the wrong number." He smiled just a little. "Best mistake you ever made." Her laugh was small but real. "You always did think everything could be fixed with timing." "Not everything," he said quietly. "Just this." She looked away, her throat tight. "Don't make promises you can't keep." He didn't answer. He just looked at her the way he used to. like she was the only truth left in his life. That night, after the twins had fallen asleep, Clara found him in his office. Papers were scattered across the desk, a half-drunk glass of whiskey beside them. "What are you working on?" she asked. "Trying to understand what happened," he said without looking up. 6 years, Clara. One day you were there, the next you were gone. No calls, no forwarding address, nothing. I thought I did something, said something. You didn't, she said quickly. Then what? He looked at her now, his eyes fierce, almost pleading. Tell me. She hesitated. It's not that simple. Yes, it is. She took a deep breath. Do you remember your Uncle Richard? Ethan frowned. Of course. He came to see me, right after I found out I was pregnant. The words hit him like a physical blow. Pregnant? She nodded. He said you had no idea, and that you couldn't. He told me that if I stayed, he'd destroy you. Your company, your reputation, everything you'd worked for. I didn't believe him at first, but then things started happening. My apartment lease got canceled, my job offer vanished, people stopped returning my calls. I understood the message. Ethan stared at her, his mind reeling. You're saying my uncle paid me to disappear, she said softly. I didn't take his money, but I left anyway. The room went deathly still. Ethan's jaw tightened. He took 6 years from me. He took everything, Clara said, and now that he knows I'm back, he'll take more if you're not careful. Ethan pushed back from his desk, fury barely contained. Not this time. Ethan, listen to me. No, he said, standing. You ran to protect me. You suffered alone because of him. I'm not going to let that stand. She stepped forward, her voice trembling. He's dangerous. He doesn't lose. Then he's about to learn how. Clara's breath caught. The man in front of her wasn't the broken, quiet Ethan she remembered. This was the man she had fallen in love with, driven, relentless, burning with purpose. But beneath that fire was something softer, something that made her heart ache. Guilt. I never stopped loving you, he said quietly. Even when I thought you'd stop loving me. Tears filled her eyes. Don't say that. It's the truth. She shook her head, stepping back. Ethan, please, don't make this harder. He didn't follow her. He just said, tomorrow I'm going to find out everything. What Richard did, where the money went, who he paid. And when I'm done, he'll never come near you or the kids again. Clara turned toward the door, her voice barely audible. You're going to start a war. Ethan's voice followed her into the hallway. Then let him be the first casualty. Ethan didn't sleep that night. The anger burned too hot, crawling under his skin like fire he couldn't put out. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Clara's face when she said the words. He paid me to disappear. By dawn, he was sitting in his office, the city still cloaked in gray light, his laptop open and coffee gone cold beside him. Lines of transactions scrolled across the screen. Payments, shell companies, untraceable transfers. All of it smelled like Richard's work. He'd seen that pattern before. Corporate money laundered into private hands. Consulting fees that led nowhere. He picked up the phone. Marissa, he said when his lawyer answered groggily, I need you at the office by 8. Bring the audit files for the fiscal years 2017 to 2019 and the private accounts for Richard Cole. There was a pause. That's restricted access, Ethan. Not to me, he said flatly. He used company funds for personal operations. I want proof. Marissa hesitated, then sighed. Understood. I'll have the files ready. Ethan hung up and leaned back in his chair, staring at the skyline. For years, he'd believed Richard when he said Clara had left because she couldn't handle the pressure of his life. The betrayal ran deeper than he'd imagined. His uncle hadn't just manipulated a company. He'd stolen Ethan's future. Clara woke to the sound of silence and the faint scent of coffee. The twins were still asleep, curled together in a tangle of blankets. She stood quietly, brushing a strand of hair from Emma's face before stepping into the hall. Ethan was gone, but a note sat on the counter beside a steaming cup of tea. Had to go into the office. Don't worry about breakfast. Ordered groceries. You and the kids can stay as long as you want. Her fingers lingered on the words as long as you want. It sounded kind, but dangerous. The longer they stayed, the harder it would be to leave. She turned toward the window. Snow still clung to the rooftops. A faint ache settled in her chest, the ache of remembering everything they could have had. She whispered to herself, "You shouldn't have come back." At coal infrastructure headquarters, the air was colder than the snow outside. Ethan walked through the marble lobby without greeting anyone, the echo of his steps sharp and deliberate. The receptionist didn't even try to stop him as he strode toward the executive floor. Richard's assistant rose from her desk. "Mr. Cole, he's in a meeting." "Not anymore," Ethan said, pushing open the office door. Richard Cole looked up from behind his desk, his silver hair perfectly in place, his expression as smooth as ever. "Ethan," he said mildly, "what an early surprise." Ethan slammed a folder onto the table. "You bought silence. You paid her to vanish, and you used my company's money to do it." Richard leaned back, unbothered. "Is that what she told you?" "I have the transactions," Ethan snapped. "Wire transfers, fake consulting contracts. You funneled money through Atlantic Management 6 years ago, same month Clara left." Richard sighed, removing his glasses. "You're making this emotional, Ethan. You always were too sentimental." "This isn't sentiment," Ethan said, his voice low and dangerous. "You destroyed her life. You destroyed mine." Richard's smile didn't reach his eyes. "You don't see it, do you? She was going to ruin you. A scandal like that, an unwed mother, the press finding out, it would have tanked your reputation, our stock, the board's confidence. I did what had to be done." Ethan's jaw clenched. "You call that protection?" "I call it foresight," Richard said coldly. "And you're welcome. You're sitting on top of a billion-dollar empire because I cleaned up your mistakes." Ethan's voice shook with fury. "They're not mistakes. They're my family." For the first time, Richard's mask slipped. "Family doesn't matter in business. You'll learn that eventually, or you'll lose everything trying to prove otherwise." Ethan leaned across the desk, eyes burning. "Then I'll lose everything, but I won't lose them again." He turned to leave. Richard's voice followed him, calm but cutting. "Be careful, Ethan. If you make me your enemy, you won't survive it." Ethan paused at the door. "You already are." That night, Clara waited for him to come home. When he finally walked in, his coat dusted with snow, his expression was unreadable. "You saw him," she said quietly. "Yes." "And?" "I have proof," Ethan said. "Transactions, fake accounts, signatures. It's all there. He admitted it. He thinks he was protecting me." Clara sank into a chair, her hands trembling. "Ethan, listen to me. Richard doesn't play fair. If you push him, he'll fight back harder than you can imagine." "I don't care." "You should," she said sharply. "He's powerful. He'll destroy you the way he destroyed us." Ethan's voice softened. "He can't destroy what's already broken, but maybe I can stop him from breaking anyone else." She stared at him, tears threatening. "You're going to make him furious." "I'm counting on it," he said. She stood abruptly, walking to the window, her reflection trembling in the glass. "I don't want you to do this for me." "I'm doing it for them," he said. "For the twins. So they'll never grow up thinking that money buys silence." Clara turned, her eyes wet. "You think the truth fixes everything. But the truth costs, Ethan. Sometimes more than lies." He stepped closer. "Then I'll pay it." The space between them felt charged, like the air before lightning strikes. Clara's voice broke when she whispered, "You're still the same." Ethan reached up, his fingers brushing a tear from her cheek. "And you're still worth every fight." Neither of them spoke after that. The snow kept falling outside, heavy and endless, blanketing the world in a fragile stillness that couldn't last. Because they both knew what was coming next wouldn't be quiet. It would be war. The morning after Ethan's confrontation with Richard felt different, charged, brittle, like the air before a storm. Clara sensed it before he even spoke a word. He moved around the penthouse quietly, too quietly, his phone buzzing every few minutes with messages he didn't share. The twins were eating breakfast at the table, chattering about snowflakes that looked like tiny stars, but Clara could barely hear them. She watched Ethan pace near the window, his expression unreadable. Finally, she set her cup down. "You've done something, haven't you?" He looked at her, eyes dark but steady. I filed the report. Corporate ethics, the board, the press. Everyone's going to see what Richard did. Her stomach dropped. You told the press? I didn't leak it, he said, but I made sure it would leak. Clara's breath hitched. Ethan, you have no idea what you've started. He stepped closer. Yes, I do. I've been complicit in his lies for too long. If I don't make this right, he'll keep destroying anyone who gets in his way. Then he'll come for you next, she said, her voice rising. For us. Ethan's tone softened. I won't let him touch you. Or them. Clara turned away, pressing a hand to her forehead. You can't control what happens next. You're poking a man who owns every connection, every favor, every shadow in this city. Ethan exhaled, his anger cooling into conviction. Then let the shadows come to light. By noon, the first article hit. Coal infrastructure under internal investigation. It wasn't detailed, just a whisper of scandal. But the name Richard Cole appeared in the opening paragraph, along with hints of financial misconduct. Marissa called immediately. It's out, she said, and Richard's furious. His lawyers are threatening injunctions. You need to stay low. I'm not hiding, Ethan replied. If he wants a fight, he knows where to find me. Ethan, don't underestimate him, Marissa warned. He's already moving money. If he buries this, we'll lose every thread. Then dig faster, he said, hanging up. Clara had been standing in the doorway the whole time, her face pale. You really mean to take him down, don't you? I already have, he said quietly. Now it's just about surviving the fallout. That evening, a black car stopped outside the building. The doorman buzzed the penthouse. Mr. Cole, a gentleman's here to see you. Ethan's gut went cold. Who? Mr. Richard Cole. Before Clara could speak, the elevator dinged, and Richard stepped out, immaculate in his tailored coat, eyes sharp as glass. Ethan, he greeted, smiling without warmth. You always did have a flair for drama. Clara instinctively stepped in front of the twins' bedroom door. Richard's gaze flicked toward her. Ah, the prodigal woman returns. You've caused quite the stir. Ethan's voice was ice. Say what you came to say. Richard set his gloves on the counter. You've made a mistake. A very public, irreversible mistake. Those proofs you're waving around won't stand up in court. You'll drag your name and this company through the mud. All for what? A woman who vanished in the night? Ethan took a step forward. For the truth. Richard's smile widened. Truth doesn't pay dividends, boy. Loyalty does. Loyalty? Ethan spat. You call blackmail loyalty? Richard's tone turned cold. I call it survival. He turned his gaze to Clara again. And you, don't delude yourself into thinking this ends well. The media loves a sob story until it gets boring. Then they'll eat you alive. Clara's voice trembled but didn't break. You already did that once. I survived. Richard's smile faltered for the first time. Ethan moved between them. Get out. Richard studied him for a long moment, then leaned closer, lowering his voice. You don't understand how deep this goes, Ethan. You're not ready to lose everything. Maybe not, Ethan said, but I'm ready to start over. Richard's jaw tightened. Then you're no longer my nephew. Ethan's reply was calm, final. Good. Richard grabbed his gloves and left without another word. The elevator doors slid shut behind him, sealing the air in thick silence. Clara sank onto the sofa, her hands shaking. He's going to retaliate. You know that, right? I know, Ethan said quietly, but he's losing control. That's when people like him make mistakes. She looked up at him, eyes full of fear and something else. Admiration. You're risking everything. I already lost everything once, he said. This time I'm fighting for it. Later, after the twins were asleep, Clara joined him on the balcony. The city stretched below, glittering under the night sky, calm on the surface, but pulsing with unrest. She wrapped her coat tighter around herself. I don't understand you, she said softly. You could have kept your wealth, your power, your comfort, and yet you're throwing it all away. For me. Ethan turned to her. Not for you, Clara. For us. For them. He nodded toward the warm glow of the bedroom. They deserve to grow up in truth, not in someone else's lie. She hesitated, then whispered, And if truth costs you everything? Then at least it's mine to lose, he said. A tear slipped down her cheek, caught by the cold wind. You're impossible, she murmured. He smiled faintly. You used to like that about me. Her lips curved, but sadness lingered in her eyes. I still do. Below them, sirens wailed faintly in the distance, a reminder that the city never slept, and neither would their fight. But for now, standing together in the fragile quiet, they both felt something rare and terrifying. Hope. The headlines came like thunder rolling across the city. By morning, every major network and financial feed carried the story. Billionaire whistleblower Ethan Cole exposes corruption in coal infrastructure. Ethan sat in silence at the kitchen table, his laptop open to the flood of notifications. His inbox was chaos. Journalists demanding statements, board members calling emergency meetings, and investors panicking. His face was on every news banner, every trending feed. Clara watched from across the room, her arms folded tightly over her chest. You knew this would happen. Yes, he said simply, and you did it anyway. He met her gaze. Would you have wanted me to stay silent? She didn't answer. The twins were coloring quietly on the floor, blissfully unaware of the storm surrounding their parents. Clara finally exhaled. You don't understand, Ethan. Richard won't stop. He'll retaliate. He already has, Ethan said, sliding his phone toward her. Look. The screen displayed a breaking news banner. Coal Infrastructure's board considers emergency vote to remove CEO. Her eyes widened. He's going after your position. He can have it, Ethan said. It's a title, not a conscience. That title is your life, Clara said sharply. You built everything around it. The company, your reputation, everything you ever worked for. Ethan leaned forward, his voice low. No, he built the lie. I'm just tearing it down. The boardroom that afternoon felt like an execution chamber. Ethan could feel the hostility the moment he stepped in. The long mahogany table gleamed beneath harsh fluorescent lights. Cameras weren't allowed inside, but the air itself seemed to hum with scrutiny. Richard sat at the far end, flanked by his loyalists. He looked perfectly calm, hands clasped before him. The chairman cleared his throat. Mr. Cole, you've put this company at serious risk. We've lost investors, partnerships, and millions in stock value overnight. We need to discuss your role moving forward. Ethan's jaw tightened. My role is to make sure this company doesn't rot from the inside. If that costs money, then it's worth every cent. Richard's voice was smooth as glass. Idealism doesn't pay salaries, nephew. You've jeopardized thousands of jobs to make a personal statement. Ethan slid a folder across the table. Those jobs were already at risk. You used company funds to finance private investigations, shell corporations, and intimidation. You don't deserve to sit here. The chairman flipped through the folder, frowning. These are serious allegations. They're facts, Ethan said, and I've already sent the full report to the SEC. You can confirm them by tomorrow morning. A ripple of murmurs spread across the table. Richard's composure cracked, just slightly. You've just handed them everything. Do you realize what happens when a company of this size is under investigation? Ethan met his gaze. Yes, it cleans house. By the time Ethan returned home, the sun had set behind a wall of clouds. Snow was falling again, silent and relentless. Clara was waiting in the living room, her expression unreadable. You look like someone who lost, she said quietly. Maybe I did. He poured himself a glass of water and sat down. They voted to suspend me as CEO until the investigation is over. Her lips parted. They actually, unanimous, he said bitterly, even the ones who swore they'd back me. Clara crossed her arms. So Richard wins again. No, Ethan said, his tone sharper than before. He doesn't win this time. He's under investigation too. The documents I gave them name him directly. He can't buy his way out of this one. She studied him for a long moment. And if they find something to pin on you, then I'll face it. Clara shook her head, her voice trembling. You don't know what it's like to lose everything, Ethan. I do, and I can't do it again. Not with the twins. He stood, crossing to her. You won't have to. I swear. Don't swear, she interrupted. Just stop. Her voice cracked, the fear she'd buried all these years finally surfacing. I spent 6 years hiding from this world. I watched every door close, every friend disappear. I can't watch it happen to you too. Ethan's voice softened. You're not alone anymore. She looked up at him then, eyes glassy but defiant. Then promise me you'll walk away before he destroys you. He hesitated. Clara, promise me. He wanted to, but he couldn't lie, not to her. I can't, he whispered. Not while he still holds power over what's right. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Then I can't stay and watch. Her words hit harder than any of Richard's threats. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the snow brushing softly against the windows, muffling the world outside. Finally, Ethan said quietly, If you go, he wins. Again. Clara turned toward the hallway, her shoulders trembling. Then maybe winning isn't the point anymore. She disappeared into the twins' room, leaving him alone with the sound of the city breathing beneath the storm. Ethan stared out at the snow-covered skyline, his reflection faint in the glass. Half man, half ghost. Somewhere below, the lights of the Cole headquarters glowed faintly against the night. He raised his phone, opened the encrypted folder Marissa had sent him that morning, and began typing a single message. It's time. Leak everything. He hit send. The storm outside grew heavier, and for the first time in years, Ethan didn't flinch from it. He welcomed it. The world watched, and the world judged. By sunrise, Ethan Cole was both a hero and a traitor, hailed for exposing corruption, condemned for destroying the empire that bore his name. The story spread faster than the snow melting on Boston streets. He hadn't slept. His phone buzzed endlessly with messages from lawyers, journalists, investors, even distant friends pretending they'd always believed in his integrity. But one message he waited for never came. Clara hadn't texted. He stood at the window, watching dawn push its pale light across the skyline when the elevator chimed. It was Marissa. She looked exhausted but determined, a briefcase clutched tightly in her hand. The leak went viral, she said without preamble. The SEC has officially launched a federal probe into coal infrastructure. They've subpoenaed Richard. Ethan turned slowly. And me? You're named as a cooperating witness, not a target. For now. She hesitated. But Richard's already striking back. He's filed an injunction against your assets, claims you used insider information for personal leverage. Ethan's jaw tightened. He's desperate. He's powerful, Marissa corrected. And desperate men with power are dangerous. He exhaled. Then we finish this. Every file, every witness, every transaction, hand it all over. She nodded but didn't move. There's something else. He looked up. Someone leaked your address to the press, she said quietly. They're camped outside. Clara and the kids can't stay here anymore. Clara stood at the window peeking through the blinds. Reporters lined the sidewalk below, flashes popping even through the snow. She turned to Ethan, her voice low but urgent. They know. I know, he said. You promised to keep them out of this. I'm trying. No, Ethan, she said, anger edging into fear. You've brought them into it. Look at them. They're 5 years old. They don't understand why men with cameras are shouting our names. Ethan moved closer. Clara, please. I'll fix this. How? She snapped. You can't fix everything. You can't keep burning your life down and expect there to be anything left for them to live in. He hesitated, guilt flickering behind his eyes. You told me to fight. I told you to survive, she said softly. That's not the same thing. A knock interrupted them. Marissa stood in the doorway. I have a safe place for you, she said to Clara. A private house outside the city. No press, no attention. You can stay there until this is over. Clara shook her head. I'm not running again. This isn't running, Marissa said gently. It's protection. For the children. Ethan stepped forward. She's right. Go with her. Clara looked at him for a long time, searching his face. And you? I'll end this. She swallowed hard. That's what I'm afraid of. By afternoon, the penthouse was silent again. The laughter that had filled it days before was gone, replaced by the hum of the city and the echo of his own thoughts. He sat at the kitchen table with his laptop open, scrolling through documents one last time. Emails, wire transfers, fake contracts. Richard's empire laid bare. He uploaded the files to the government portal, each click a nail sealing the coffin. When it was done, he closed the laptop and sat back, feeling the exhaustion of years pressed down on him. For the first time, there was nothing left to do but wait. His phone buzzed, a private number. He answered. "You've made quite a mess," Richard's voice said, smooth and unhurried. Ethan's knuckles whitened. "You're finished." "Finished?" Richard chuckled. "I built this city, Ethan. You think a few documents and headlines can erase that? You used the company to destroy people's lives. I used it to protect our name," Richard snapped. "And you," his voice sharpened, venom creeping in, "you threw it away for a woman who didn't even love you enough to stay." "Careful," Ethan said. Richard's tone turned mocking. "She left once. She'll leave again. You think she'll stand by when you're broke, disgraced? She'll take the children and vanish, like she always does." Ethan's voice dropped to a deadly calm. "If you ever go near them again—" "Don't threaten me, boy," Richard hissed. "You've already lost. You just don't know it yet." The line went dead. Ethan stared at the phone for a long time, his reflection warped in the black screen. He didn't notice the tears until one fell onto his hand, hot and sharp against his skin. Night came heavy and quiet. Snow blanketed the city again, soft and relentless. Ethan sat in the dark, replaying every choice that had led here, every silence, every mistake. Then his phone vibrated, a message from Clara. "The twins are asleep. We're safe. I saw the news. I don't know what happens next, but thank you for fighting for the truth." He read it twice, the words pulling something loose inside him. For the first time in days, he allowed himself to breathe. He typed back, fingers trembling slightly. "It's almost over. I'll come for you soon." "Be careful," she replied. "He's not done." He stared at the screen, then looked out into the night where the city lights flickered like distant fires. Richard wasn't done, but neither was he. Ethan stood, grabbing his coat. The war wasn't finished, not until he looked Richard in the eye one last time. And this time, he wouldn't walk away. Ethan arrived at the coal infrastructure tower just after midnight. The city was asleep beneath a layer of snow, but the building blazed with light, like a monument to everything he was trying to destroy. His reflection stared back at him from the glass doors, exhausted, hollow-eyed, but unbroken. Inside, the security guard hesitated when he saw him. "Mr. Cole, sir, you're not—" "I still have access," Ethan said, swiping his ID badge. The lock clicked open. "Don't worry, I won't be long." He took the elevator to the top floor, the ride silent except for the low hum of the cables. His heart pounded in his chest, not from fear but from purpose. Richard was somewhere in this building. He could feel it. When the elevator doors opened, the lights in the executive wing were still on. He followed the faint sound of voices toward the conference room. Through the glass wall, he saw him. Richard Cole, seated at the table, talking to two men in suits Ethan didn't recognize. They stood when they saw him, startled. Richard didn't. He turned slowly, his expression calm, composed, as though he'd been expecting this visit. "Ethan," he said, rising. "I wondered how long it would take." "You've got the FBI on your doorstep," Ethan said. "You think hiding here changes anything?" Richard smiled faintly. "I don't hide, I negotiate." He gestured to the two men. "These gentlemen are from the board. We were just discussing contingency strategies." "Contingency?" Ethan stepped closer. "You mean cover-up?" Richard's tone hardened. "Be careful what you accuse me of in front of witnesses." Ethan looked at the board members. "Leave," he said. "Now." They hesitated, glancing between the two men. Richard gave a small nod, and they quietly exited the room. When the door shut behind them, Ethan said, "You could have stopped this years ago. You could have told me the truth about what you did to Clara." "I told you what you needed to hear," Richard said. "She was a distraction. You had the potential to build an empire, and she would have dragged you down. I did what you were too weak to do yourself." Ethan's fist tightened. "You ruined her life. You took my children's father away before they ever had one." Richard's composure cracked for the briefest moment. Children? Ethan stepped closer, his voice low and steady. Twins. 5 years old. You kept me from them. Richard froze, and for a heartbeat, there was something almost human in his eyes. Shock, disbelief, maybe even guilt. Then it vanished. So that's what this is about. You're letting sentiment dictate your destruction? Ethan slammed his hands on the table, the sound echoing through the room. This isn't sentiment. This is justice. Richard didn't flinch. Justice is a luxury for people who can afford to lose. You've never understood that, Ethan. Then maybe I finally do, Ethan said, because I've already lost everything else. Richard straightened, his voice lowering into a dangerous calm. Walk away now and I'll fix this. I'll make the investigation disappear. I'll restore your position, your fortune. You'll be the hero who cleaned up the company's mistakes. Ethan laughed bitterly. You think I want to be saved by you? I think you'll realize too late that truth is a poor investment, Richard said. Maybe, Ethan replied, but it's one I can live with. The two men locked eyes, uncle and nephew, mentor and enemy, each a mirror of the other's resolve. Richard broke the silence first. You've made your choice then. I have. Then so have I. He pressed a button on his desk phone. Security. Ethan shook his head. Don't bother. They already know who you are. They'll come for you before sunrise. Richard's hand hovered over the receiver. You always did underestimate me. Ethan turned toward the door. And you always thought you were untouchable. He was halfway out of the room when Richard said quietly, You'll regret this, Ethan. Not today, but soon. Ethan didn't look back. I already did, 6 years ago. By the time he reached the parking garage, the first flicker of red and blue lights painted the snow outside. Federal agents moved through the lobby like a tide of shadows, flashing badges and issuing orders. The building that had once stood as a symbol of power now looked like a mausoleum. Ethan stood beside his car, watching the agents file inside. His phone buzzed. Clara's name lit up the screen. He answered instantly. Clara! Her voice trembled through the line. I saw the news. They said they're arresting him. They are, he said. It's over. Is it? She asked softly. For you? Ethan hesitated. It will be. There was a pause, then her voice came gentler. Come home, Ethan. The words hit harder than he expected. He exhaled slowly, the cold burning his lungs. I will, he said, as soon as I can. When the call ended, he looked up at the tower one last time. The lights inside flickered, shadows moving against the glass as agents led Richard Cole away in handcuffs. The man who had built an empire on lies was finally being dismantled by the truth. Ethan slipped into his car, the engine purring to life. Snow began to fall again, heavier this time, blanketing the city in silence. He drove without looking back, the glow of the tower fading in the rearview mirror until it was nothing but a faint glimmer swallowed by the night. For the first time in 6 years, he didn't feel trapped by what he'd lost. He felt free. The storm had passed by the time Ethan reached the edge of the city. Dawn was just beginning to rise, painting the horizon in pale streaks of silver and blue. He hadn't slept in nearly 2 days, but exhaustion didn't matter anymore. For the first time in years, he felt lighter. The truth was finally out. Richard was behind bars, and the company was being torn apart by investigations. The empire that had stolen everything from him was collapsing, and he had helped pull it down. But victory, he found, was a quiet thing. It didn't roar or celebrate. It just exhaled. He parked on a small hill overlooking the frozen harbor, letting the car engine idle. The world outside was calm, deceptively so. His hands rested on the steering wheel as the memories returned. Clara's eyes that night in the park, the weight of the twins' small bodies as he carried them into the warmth, the way she had whispered thank you like a prayer. A soft knock startled him. He turned to see Marissa standing outside the car, wrapped in her wool coat, a folder tucked beneath her arm. He hadn't even noticed her approach. You found me fast, he said, rolling down the window. I've been tracking you since last night, she said. You didn't think I'd let you disappear now, did you? He opened the passenger door and she climbed in, brushing snow from her hair. You look like hell, she said lightly. Feels about right. Marissa handed him the folder. The FBI took Richard into custody at 4:30. He's not talking, but his financial trail is ironclad. They froze all his assets. The board will cooperate. Ethan opened the folder, scanning the documents without reading them. He'll fight it. Of course, she said, but this time he doesn't have an army. You dismantled it. He nodded slowly. And the company? She hesitated. It's going to fall apart, but maybe it should. Maybe that's how it heals. Ethan closed the folder, then let it burn. Marissa studied him for a moment. And you? What happens now? He looked out over the harbor. I think I'm done fighting. You've been saying that for years, she said softly. Yeah, he admitted. But this time, I mean it. By mid-morning, he was standing on the steps of the federal building. Reporters clustered outside the barricades, shouting his name, waving microphones, demanding a statement. Mr. Cole, did you leak the documents yourself? Is it true you're stepping down permanently? Will you press charges against Richard Cole? Ethan ignored them all. He walked past the crowd, through the metal detectors into the cold marble lobby. Inside, an FBI agent escorted him to a private room where a recorder and a single manila file sat on the table. This is the last interview, the agent said. Once you sign the affidavit, you're free to go. Ethan nodded, his hand steady as he flipped through the papers. Each line was an ending, the confirmation that he had done what he came to do. When he finished, he stood and extended his hand. Thank you, he said. The agent shook it. You did the right thing, Mr. Cole. Most people wouldn't have. Ethan gave a faint smile. Most people have more to lose. Outside, the snow had begun to melt under the weak sun. The reporters were still there, but Ethan didn't stop. He walked straight past them, through the slush and noise, into the waiting car Marissa had sent. As the city blurred past the windows, his phone buzzed. A message. We're at the cabin. The kids miss you. Clara. He stared at the screen for a long moment before typing back. On my way. He hit send, leaned back, and closed his eyes. For the first time in years, the road ahead didn't look like a battlefield. It looked like a way home. The cabin sat at the edge of a forest just outside Lexington. Snow covered the roof and the pines, muffling every sound. When he arrived, the world felt softer, slower. The smell of wood smoke drifted through the air. He knocked once before the door opened. Clara stood there, bundled in a sweater, her hair loose and slightly tangled. She didn't say anything at first. Neither did he. They just looked at each other. Two people carrying too many ghosts. Then she stepped aside. Come in. The twins were in the living room, building towers out of wooden blocks. Emma looked up first and gasped. Daddy! The word hit him like a wave. He knelt as both children ran to him, their small arms wrapping around his neck. He closed his eyes and held them tightly, their laughter muffled against his chest. Clara watched from the doorway, her hand pressed to her mouth. When his gaze met hers again, her eyes were wet but shining. They know, he asked quietly. She nodded. I told them the truth. He rose slowly, his voice rough. And you? Clara took a hesitant step closer. I think I'm still figuring out what the truth means. Ethan's smile was small but real. Then let's figure it out together. For a moment, neither moved. Then she reached out and took his hand. It was a simple gesture, but it felt like forgiveness. The twins cheered at their joined hands, oblivious to the weight of history between them. Outside, the sun broke through the clouds, turning the snow into fields of light. Inside, the fire crackled, the warmth spreading slowly through the cabin. Ethan looked around, the laughter, the quiet, the peace, and realized something profound. The war was over, and somehow, against all odds, he had made it home. The cabin was quiet when Ethan woke. Morning sunlight poured through the window, scattering golden lines across the floorboards. The fire had burned down to embers, and the faint scent of pine and ash filled the air. For a moment, he didn't move. He just listened. To the stillness, to the distant laughter of the twins playing outside, to the gentle rhythm of Clara's voice calling their names. It was a sound he'd once thought he would never hear again. He stood, stretching the stiffness from his shoulders, and stepped to the window. Outside, the snow had begun to melt, revealing patches of earth and the fragile green of early spring. Emma and Liam were building something, a crooked snowman with sticks for arms and an uneven smile. Clara was kneeling beside them, adjusting a scarf around its neck. She turned her head slightly, as if sensing his gaze, and smiled up at him. It wasn't the hesitant, cautious smile she used to wear. It was warm. Real. Ethan smiled back. Later over breakfast, the twins chattered about everything and nothing. The birds, the snowman, the cocoa they wanted before lunch. Ethan sat across from Clara, the mug warm between his hands. For the first time in years, silence between them didn't feel like distance. It felt like peace. "How long do we stay here?" Clara asked quietly once the kids had run off to the living room. "As long as you want," Ethan said. "There's no rush." She gave him a small, almost wistful smile. "You always say that." He studied her face, the softness in her eyes. "Do you want to go back?" Clara looked toward the window. "Back to what? The city's still chaos. The media will move on eventually, but right now—" She trailed off, then met his gaze again. "The kids deserve quiet. We both do." Ethan nodded. "Then we'll make quiet. Here." Her lips parted slightly, surprise flickering across her face. "You'd stay? After everything?" He smiled faintly. "I've had enough of skyscrapers and boardrooms. I want something that doesn't need fixing." Clara's voice softened. "You don't have to keep proving anything, Ethan." "I know," he said. "That's why I can finally stop." By midday, they walked together down the wooded path behind the cabin. The snow crunched softly beneath their boots, the air crisp and clean. For once, there were no cameras, no questions, no boardrooms full of betrayal, just the whisper of trees and the faint sound of the twins laughing somewhere ahead. Ethan spoke first. "You know, I used to think my life ended the day you left." Clara stopped walking, turning to face him. "And now?" He took a deep breath. "Now I think it started the day you texted the wrong number." A quiet laugh escaped her. "You're still romanticizing disaster." "Maybe, but sometimes disaster gives you a second chance." Her smile faded into something gentler, deeper. "You've changed. So have you." They stood there for a moment, the winter sunlight pooling around them like fragile gold. The wind shifted, carrying the faint laughter of their children through the trees. Ethan reached out, brushing his fingers against hers. "I don't expect everything to go back to how it was," he said quietly. "But maybe we can build something new, something honest." Clara looked at their hands, then at him. "And if I'm scared," he smiled softly, "then I'll be scared with you." Her eyes glistened, and for a heartbeat, all the years between them seemed to fall away. She took his hand, her fingers lacing through his. "You always find the right words," she murmured. "Maybe I finally mean them." That evening, they built a fire and sat together on the old couch, the twins curled up between them with blankets and cocoa. Emma fell asleep first, her head on Clara's lap. Liam dozed off soon after, clutching Ethan's sleeve. The firelight flickered across their faces, painting them in soft amber hues. Clara looked at him over the flames. "What happens now?" Ethan thought for a long time before answering. "Now, we live. Quietly, maybe clumsily, but together." Clara smiled, her voice barely above a whisper. "That sounds perfect." Outside, snow began to fall again. Not a storm this time, but a gentle dusting that shimmered in the firelight through the window. It felt like the world had paused, holding its breath. Ethan leaned back, closing his eyes, his arm draped around Clara and the twins. For the first time in years, the noise inside him was gone. No guilt, no anger, just warmth. He had spent so long chasing redemption, trying to reclaim what he'd lost. But sitting there, surrounded by the quiet heartbeat of a family that had somehow found its way back to him, he realized redemption had never been about power or revenge or justice. It had always been about love and the courage to start again. As the fire burned low and the snow fell softly outside, Ethan Cole finally found what he'd been searching for all along. Home.